Hello friends, I'm your friend Chetan Bhola and you are watching Bhola Moto. In this video, we will be discussing about the 10 most important sensors of an engine. So I will be giving you about the brief information about these sensors. I have made several videos previously about some of the sensors. I will be giving you the link of those videos in the description. You can watch those videos also. If you feel like sharing this video to your friends, sharing this information to your friends, please share this video right now. And if you didn't subscribe my channel, please subscribe it at this moment, and please hit the bell icon also, because I make these kind of videos every week, 2 videos a week. So get notified about each and every new video as soon as possible. So please click on that bell icon. Here is the list of all the 10 sensors, but there are several more sensors that are included here. You can see there are 2 sensors. These are the 2 sensors. So you're going to get some knowledge about more than 10 sensors. So this is quite interesting for you also. So first of all, I would like to tell you about the MAP sensor, that is manifold absolute pressure sensor, which senses the pressure of the manifold and sends a signal to the ECU, so that ECU can just measure that the temperature, the pressure is sufficient or not, or the pressure is good for the combustion, or pressure is good for the exhaust, for the most of the amount of the inlet gases to get into that engine. Now coming to the another sensor, that is a mass airflow sensor. Mass airflow sensor senses the flow of the air that is going to enter inside the engine, because as high as the flow, the more amount of the air will be entering inside the engine. Now since the more amount of air entering inside the engine requires more amount of the fuel to be burned with it. So that's why, according to the values from the MAF sensor, ECU sends the signal to the injector, and then injector injects the amount of fuel which is suitable for the amount of air that has entered inside the engine. So that's why, for making the synchronization between the air, mass of air, and the fuel, and making a ratio which is conventional for the air fuel mixture, the MAP sensor is required. Coming to the another second most important sensor is the throttle position sensor. When you press the pedal, there is a throttle valve that changes its position. So this position sensor just senses the angular displacement of that throttle. Now as more the angular displacement of the throttle valve, the more of the amount of the fuel has to be entered inside the engine as per your command. So that's why it just senses the displacement of that valve, and in that and in the response it sends the more fuel inside the engine. On the other hand, the third sensor is the intake air temperature sensor. The temperature of the air that is going to enter inside the engine is also very important, because if the temperature is too much high, then there are the chances of the pre-ignition or several kind of knocking. And on the other hand, if the temperature of the air is very less, then there are the chances the fuel that is going to enter inside the engine to be remained unburned. So that's why intake air temperature is also important to be sensed. Now the other sensor which is required is the coolant level or the temperature sensor. So the coolant level, if the coolant level is too much high, then when the temperature increases, then the coolant may come out. So that's why coolant level is also required to be sensed each and every moment. If the coolant level is too much less, then the amount of heat to be dissipated will be less. So that's why there may be a chances of the overheating of the engine. And if the coolant is so much less, then there are chances of the seizing of the engine also. Now coming to the other thing is the coolant temperature sensor. If the temperature of the coolant rises above certain limits, so that's why you are needed to be cautioned that the temperature is too much high of your engine, so that you can just give the rest to the engine so that it can come down to the normal temperature. Now another thing is the camshaft position sensor and the crankshaft position sensor. There are so many things that are depending on the crankshaft sensor, because the crankshaft position sensor also tells the position of the pistons in different cylinders. As at 0 degree, first piston will be going to take the intake stroke, and at 90 degree and at 180 degree there are different positions and different strokes. So that's why this crankshaft is required, because when we get to know about the stroke of the piston of different cylinder, then we can get to know when the fuel has to be injected, when the valve has to be opened. So in that case, we get to know from this crankshaft position sensor that when the fuel has to be injected. If if the crankshaft reaches at certain angle, then the signals are sent to the ECU, and then ECU sends the signal to the injector to inject the fuel. So in that way it works. Now camshaft position sensor is also required, so that it just gets synchronizes to the crankshaft. So that's why these both of them move in synchronization. Now coming to the next point, that is the knock sensor. When the fuel is inside the combustion chamber, there are some chances of the knocking. Also, I have explained knocking. You can please watch that video. Whenever there are several chances of knocking, so knock is going. Whenever there is some knock produced inside the engine, the combustion process is not that good. So that's why knock sensor is also required, so that it just sense whenever the knock takes place and just tell you. So that's why knock sensor is there. Knock sensor is basically a piezoelectric sensor which senses whenever there is some pressure applied on that sensor, and when this piezoelectric crystal just experiences some pressure, it generates the voltage, and then these voltage are sensed by the ECU. Now coming to the another sensor, that is the O2 sensor. It just senses how the combustion process has took place inside the combustion chamber. The more efficiently the combustion process takes place, the less will be the O2 amount in the exhaust manifold. So that's why O2 sensor senses the amount of oxygen that is coming inside the exhaust manifold. The more O2 inside the exhaust manifold signifies that there is the less efficient combustion process taken place in the combustion chamber, and the vice versa. Now coming to the another point, that is the EGR pressure sensor and EGR valve sensor. EGR is the exhaust gas recirculation, and EGR pressure sensor senses the pressure in the whole system of this EGR. So if the pressure reaches in the EGR system above certain level, then there are chances of some dangerous things to happen. So that's why EGR pressure is also required, and if the pressure is quite low in the EGR system, then it is quite difficult for the exhaust gases to re-enter inside the EGR. Now another thing is the valve sensor, and the valve sensor is required to turn on and off this system. Now coming to the another sensor, that is transmission shift sensor. Whenever you push the gear 1, 2, 3, so this is needed to be sensed when the gear 1 is pushed, when the gear 2 is pushed. So that's why you get to know on which gear you are driving. So that's why transmission shift sensor is required. Transmission temperature sensor is also very important sensor, because whenever there is transmission, there is some meshing of the gears, and when there is meshing, there is some heat generation over there. So the heat is generated inside the transmission system. So that's why there is a temperature sensor which senses the temperature inside the transmission system, and if the temperature reaches quite more than a certain limit, it will just give you the caution, and so that you can just give the rest to the transmission system, so that whenever it reaches the normal temperature, you can again drive your car. So as to ignore the hazardous things to happen to your transmission system. So these are the all sensors that I want to talk to you about, that most of the people have requested to make video on. I will be making other 2 videos about the sensors that are used for the safety of the vehicle, and other some miscellaneous sensors that are required in the car, as per the request from the viewers. So that's why I will be making those videos. If you didn't subscribe my channel, please subscribe it right now. I am saying it again and again, so that you can get connected to me. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. You can comment down what part do you like. If you didn't like this video, you can give a dislike to this video, but you have to tell me where should I improve myself, so that next time I get the like button. Thanks a lot for watching. Keep watching, keep sharing, and keep supporting, guys. Thanks a lot.